Okay, I think AI is the most potent and most adaptive assistant for humans in humankind, let's say.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Brainiac Blueprint. Today's episode is a part of the healthcare series. We are joined today by Naveen Koneru. Naveen, how are you today?
Hi, Kyle. Hi, everybody. I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm very, very excited about this conversation.
Of course. Same. Yeah, I'm ready to jump in. So Naveen is the head of partnerships at Healing Breaths. You can check out Healing Breaths at healingbreaths.org. Also on social media, Instagram and Facebook, they are at Art of Living Healing Breaths. So check them out. There's a lot of good content there. Naveen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what the head of partnerships does, and a little bit about the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, thank you. Thank you once again. So let me start with what we do at Healing Breaths and the Art of Living, Kyle. Art of Living Foundation is a worldwide foundation, a global nonprofit that's in about 146 countries with a mission to be able to create a stress-free, violence-free society. Our founder, Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, fondly says his goal is to be able to put a smile on everyone on the planet.
I love that.
Yeah, I can't smile but say that. And he does a really good job about it. And we're obviously very inspired. Within our foundation, Healing Breaths is a series of programs, or I would really call it as an initiative to help serve healthcare professionals. And it really started off about 8 years ago in a room in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina, where our founder and a few doctors were having a conversation. And he started up saying, well, we are serving very many parts of the society. Are we doing anything to take care of our physicians, our nurses, our providers? The answer was a resoundingly silent no, or not yet.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And being the dynamic leader that he is, he said, well, why don't we do something for them? And from there, Dr. Sari Patel, Dr. Sushmita Jasti, who are based in New York, they took that up and got our programs accredited by New York University Langone School of Medicine, American Holistic Nurses Association, and now AGD, American General Dentistry, and we are certified programs. So far, we have taken our work to 15,000 plus healthcare professionals across the country and in 50 plus institutions. Some of really highly reputable institutions like Harvard's Mass General Hospital, Penn Medicine, Children's National, Kaiser Permanente, and a whole host of other incredible institutions out there. And my role squarely within Healing Breaths is to be able to take our programs and our programming, if you will, to institutions across the country and to be the champion and the campaigner for the work that we do. Yeah, we believe healthcare professionals. Yeah, we believe that healthcare professionals are fortunately still at the epicenter of advising on the well-being for individuals in the community. The irony, though, Kyle, is that in taking care of others' well-being, unfortunately, they do that at the cost of their own well-being.
Yep.
And that's why there is a rampant degree of burnout in healthcare. And our mission in Healing Breaths is not only, it's almost 3 stages, if you will. First is we want to make sure that we help healthcare professionals come from burnout to their baseline of well-being, and from there take them to a level of really thriving in their own well-being, right? And thereby inspire them to be shining examples of well-being for the community, for the patients, and that's the third level, in a way that we can help, they can pass on the techniques that they learn, which is really what we bring to the table. We believe well-being is a journey. It's not just a program. And by that, everyone is at different points in their well-being journey.
Of course.
So Healing Breaths is very delicately architected, so we serve them at each stages of their well-being journey.
It's such a beautiful mission, and I think it gets overlooked a lot. I think about this a lot of just from my own standpoint. I'm a marketer, right? I'm by no means a healthcare professional by any means, but I've done a lot of marketing for hospitals and different healthcare organizations. And the point that you make about, the burnout and the emotional well-being hit really hard with me when I was marketing a well-known children's hospital, and just having to research and see, the cases and like these kids and like that weighed on me, just reading about this, let alone actually treating them day in and day out. And I'm just like, man, how do these people get up, especially after the worst case scenario kind of happens and they continue to do their thing? It takes a certain person, to be able to do that and continue day in, day out, just smile on your face, trying to take care of these people. It's a
very,
crazy thing.
Very true. Yeah, my heart goes out to them, and it's interesting because providers really are actually, I call it as the triad apex of human life, right? That is, they go through extraordinary training, probably some of the toughest professional training out there. Physicians, for example, until about early 30s, they're still in training. And they're usually very well financially placed, probably the top 5% of the society. And they do all of this because they want to answer a calling to serve humanity. It's very noble, very prosperous, and very highly trained, at the height of their potential. And yet, at least in the physician's arena, their suicide rate is 2 times that of the general community, right? So there's a lot that is happening in there, and that is largely unaddressed. That we owe to take care of them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's why, again, I think it's a very beautiful mission that you guys are thinking about them, because they spend so much time thinking about us. So
yes,
that's great. Okay, so before we dive a little bit deeper, as you and I spoke, I always like to get kind of a simple prompt, a simple answer from all of our guests. Because this is an AI podcast that we are relating back to healthcare, I would love for you to finish this sentence of, I think AI is blank.
Okay, I think AI is the most potent and most adaptive assistance for humans in humankind, let's say.
Interesting. I like that. Do you have any specific things in mind, or like why that answer came to you?
I think largely it's because it's multiple answers put together.
Sure,
if I would ask AI, it would probably summarize it better for me. That's an answer in itself.
Yeah, you need a companion to do this episode for you.
Exactly right. But I do think so. It's largely because what it has done is a great chunk of what we do and what we define our lives and the value that we really provide to our lives and others is our thinking, right? And I think what AI did is it really helped leapfrog valuable thinking that we do in a given day, in a given time, right? By really cutting out a lot of, I want to say probably not necessarily cutting out, but by bridging a lot of the gaps or the hoops that we have to go through in order to arrive at really anything, right? So a very simple example. Yesterday, I was looking up how do I have 4 specific plants I want to put in my garden, and is it okay to pair them in a certain way and actually position them at a certain point of the garden? This would have probably taken me about an hour or hour and a half of research to actually figure that out. And it was literally 2 questions And I was able to get an answer without having to look up or searching anything. It did the search for me. It understood exactly. And on top of that, it asked me the level 2 and level 3 questions, which I wanted to ask it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Probably I did not think of either. Now, this is Naveen just poking around, having fun, and talking about gardening. But a lot of the more important stuff, so on a day-to-day basis, when I actually go and am presenting to decision makers, C-level executives in a health system, I want to know the basic blueprint about the particular organization, right? And yes, I could have potentially configured my CRM and other research tools in a way that I know the specific data points that I want to. But now I just train my agent in a way that it can map exactly to what the problems, not only the configuration of their health system, but the existing problems they're going through and the latest research, but also where is the play for our program, because the agent understands what we provide as value and what are the points that we need to be able to touch upon. Um, that's It probably does it way faster than what I can digest it,
Yep.
obviously. And this work would have probably been a good 30 minutes before, if not even more, right? And there's everything in between from there to my gardening.
It's funny. You kind of coined exactly the way that I approach and think about it. I think so many people give AI a negative connotation because they think of it as human replacement, but when it's done right, it's human empowerment. Instead of
Exactly.
you wasting 2 hours trying to figure out, can I plant these two things next to each other? You got this answer really quickly, and now you can go on doing the important stuff, right? So
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
empowerment,
Yeah.
which is the main point of AI, and I'm a true
I,
believer in that.
yeah, I love that. I love how you call it as empowerment. Absolutely.
Awesome. So let's jump into AI a little bit more here. So I was hoping that you could, for myself and for the audience, kind of explain, that was a great garden example, but how you use it from your day to day in your role at Healing Breaths. Like, what tools are you using with AI? Do you have workflows that you've automated? What's your current setup and your current experience looking like?
Yeah. So this is a great question, and it's probably loaded in a few ways, Kyle.
Mhm.
um, I think we're in very, very early stages, actually, of AI adoption. We're probably set up in three different levels. One is, at least the way I tend to actually use it. One is at a strategic level, another is at operational level, and then the third is really how can we really substitute, or I want to say empower our organization with AI,
Mhm.
substituting a lot of the tools and processes that we're actually doing. I think at a strategic level, when I actually tend to do market analysis, when I tend to do prospectors, research, when I actually want to compare tools that we're actually looking to adopt or experiment with, or for that matter, just lay out a process and take feedback about it,
Sure.
be it a micro process or be it a strategic initiative that we need to take. And also, I want to say forecasting roadblocks, which has actually been a huge, huge way
Mm.
to be able to adopt AI. And I use it in a very, very conversational way. And
Same, yeah.
yeah, and I'm laughing at it because I actually treat AI very respectful in my conversations with
A
all
lot
gestures.
of please and thank yous in there.
Yes, indeed, and it actually does a great job at doing it right back at me. And I love those conversations and that tonality. Part of it is probably also adapting, LLM to my set of conversations,
Sure.
and I believe in that. So I think that's at the strategic level. And I think at a process level, what we're noticing is, and I can even go into so many different segments, but my adoption from a strategic sales and partnership standpoint of view, and the other part being at an operational level in a sales respect, that is, okay, if we have to drop scripts that we need to put together, let's say we're doing a 15 segment sequence of emails that we need to do in the past. We probably spend a couple of days and numerous iterations of creating those sequences. But now it's a matter of a few minutes to be
Yep.
able to get the first draft out, and doing it in a way that actually aligns with our brand tonality, the conversation that we would like to, and the length of the sequences that we need to have. And that's at the email level. But now what we're trying to do is how can we take that further down in the customer journey? And what we have noticed is that our audience in healthcare, their primary modus operandi of communication is actually text messages for the most part, at least
Okay.
with external parties. So then comes the question, how can we create those micro conversations on text to be able to help improve customer engagement and the customer journey using text messages? And how can we marry generative AI with text messaging services? And we are in very, very early stages of that. By no means I want to claim any mastery over that. Twilio, ChatGPT is some of the things that we're looking at. GHL and the generative AI tools is another set that we're looking at. Very early stages of experimentation, but we think this will actually help create, without compromising authenticity, with sharing that these are our agents, so to speaking, and that they can connect us to humans who can actually correspond to them. So that's at an operational level. Not to mention, we use Apollo, we use HubSpot, obviously ChatGPT, creating custom bots according to our mission or brand alignment. And let me see, we also are using Quiller of the world. Obviously, Canva has a lot of AI embedded in it too. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of tools that the rest of my team is actually using, which I'm not rolling out right now. And I think the other aspect is about the processes, right? So the third part I was talking about. When it comes to processes, I think the hardest part, Kyle, with any human leapfrogging, if you will, that we take is our own mind bend around how we need to rethink doing the same job or a process in an entirely different way.
Yep.
Being very open-minded and going with a sense of, I don't know if there's a better way to do it, but let me explore.
Yep.
And what are the tools out there to be able to do it? And that's actually really phenomenal to start figuring, and that actually opens up a lot of other options.
100%. I think you and I are in a very similar mode when it comes to our work of trying to get more for less and save time, in terms of, our like repetitive tasks. And so many times I've been doing something and I've gone to ChatGPT or, like an N8N or something like that and tried to build out my workflow. And it was like, what are you doing? Do it this way. And it's so much better. There's like, the light bulbs go off. You don't realize just, you just start doing
Exactly.
it. And it's like, oh, wow,
Exactly.
there's actually a way better way to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And recently talking about agentic AI that's something that I have to delve and explore in. But for AI to be able to figure the workflow and actually present and potentially even experiment and A/B test those, I'm actually really excited about that prospect.
That's great. I think that's a perfect segue into the next topic that I wanted to bring up, which is hyper-personalization. You talked about your target audience. They do respond more to SMS and to text, and you're trying to A/B test, the messaging a little bit. So, without giving the secret sauce, keeping, what works for you. I'm curious, what your approach is and kind of like what you are testing and how you're trying to make this as quick as possible, the learning process, to get those texts out there, how you gauge success, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I have to be very honest. I'm in early stages of testing, but and my team sometimes may say that I'm a little ambitious about it. But what we really want to create is what we notice in terms of a human engagement level is the short span of, the short attention span that one actually has, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a very simple example is we show up at various events where we have healthcare professionals. And we're not the only ones who show up as sponsors or collaborators at the events. And healthcare professionals are very excited to know of our existence, of our mission, of our service to them. And also being and coming from a nonprofit world, I think a lot of health systems are not nonprofit as well. So there's a lot of amicability there. But the point is, in a very busy day, for them to know who we are and to drop one remark in there, for us to be able to capture that, potentially in a conversation, an agent listening to it would be really ideal.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as they give their information, something as simple as scanning a QR code, and instead of filling a form, that they shoot a text over to us, right? And for us to immediately respond to that text that actually came through from them, and create and potentially follow up not too long after, using a personal remark that actually was captured during the conversation, really, really makes it hyper personal at that point.
That's great.
Yeah, and that's just a very simple example. I think we could potentially take a lot in there. For example, I know we kicked my recorder out of this conversation, TLDV, but I love TLDV. Many great things about TLDV as well, but how we could potentially go through the scripts of TLDV in the meetings and then be able to create personalizations, potentially in proposals, or if it's not necessarily in proposals, even in just the emails that we're sending out, where we're sending the proposals or follow-ups in there, right? And then I think a very remarkable use of AI could be where we have these conversations, right? And recorders such as TLDV have the content in there, but to customize proposals, business proposals that show landmark ROI specific to customers' values could be hyper important in winning proposals. And by that, if you can nail it down to one or two metrics, right? If you take the conversation scripts, nail it down to one or two metrics, and embed those metrics in your proposals, that would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, you make a great point. I think, whether we're talking about a healthcare professional or just your average Joe, we all, what's the stat? We get 20,000 pieces of content a day or something like that, right? So, our BS meters are dialed in, and we can immediately say, like, nope, that's not for me. So if they get a message that uses their own language or uses that metric that they're looking for, that is what's going to stand out, especially if you can automate that. And that's perfect. If you get that figured out, let me know.
I think we're a few steps away, and who knows, there may be a company doing it out there already, a bunch of engineers in a garage.
I'm sure there is. I'm curious if, when we originally connected, I think you had mentioned there's a B2B to C component of this as well. So I'm wondering if there's complications in having to kind of almost have two markets or two audiences, and if that makes it even more difficult to really dial in, who you're trying to connect with and how you're speaking to them.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of our B2B comes because it's channeled through our B2C, right? So we essentially have a B2C program, which is really, we call it open programs, open for all healthcare providers and professionals, well, not providers as well, who could come to our programs. And they like it, and we just gently ask if this is something that could be useful for their colleagues, and 9 out of 10 say yes. And we have a very professional process, just very neatly laid out, in which they can make an introduction. And that's how we make our B2B entries, which is really great. Now, once we go into the B2B arena, I think a big challenge is really bandwidth that healthcare professionals have. So healthcare professionals, as much as they would like to be able to, talking about 20,000 pieces of content, they're probably dealing with 10x more in there.
Yeah.
I'm including all the signals that they have to respond to, right? In their aspects of providing care. I think the challenge then is within that B2B environment, how can we actually serve and take care of our target audience, which really makes it inevitably B2B to C. With the big challenge being how can we create a very positive engagement and actually creating interest is easy. Moving from interest to engagement, the biggest challenge being bandwidth. I think that's the hardest part. And once they actually engage in a form of programming, how can we continue that engagement so that they can move into the next steps of the journey, right? Someone comes in for maybe a 15-minute breather segment that we do. And now they are interested in, I want to make it to the next 1 hour segment that's coming up in 2 weeks. But hey, I got paged. Shucks, I can't make it to this 1 hour Be Well series. When is my next one coming up, right? So how do we keep track of our participants in that well-being journey who have the interest, but who really fighting tooth and nail for minutes and seconds on their schedule to be able to, ever so inevitably try to float their well-being up while taking care of 100 other patients? How do we do that? That's the challenge that we actually face. How can we partner with them? How can we hyper-personalize? How can we make sure that they're not off the track? How are we their support rails in their own well-being journey? So a lot of this is really keeping track, communicating, and inspiring them to be able to be at the top of their well-being, and then ultimately showcase self-rewards of taking initiative, of taking care of themselves.
That the self-reward and the inspiration that you mentioned there is interesting, and I think it's super important because when you're talking about burnout, the last thing you want to do is another task, whatever that may be. So it's so easy to just say I'll do it next time, or okay, I'm too tired, whatever it is. So you're right, there has to be some kind of almost pleasure built into it, like that reward that gets them to be like, okay, it is worth my time. I'm exhausted, but let me give them 30 minutes and kind of see what's going on here. So that is a very interesting challenge for sure. Well, cool. So I think you mentioned an interesting point about bandwidth. Everybody has the desire to get more done, and so I wanted to pivot a little bit to operational efficiency and scalability. I know that you guys have a small and mighty team, and you have a lot that you're trying to accomplish, and it's again a beautiful mission. So I'm curious if you could just say, for you and your role and your organization, what does efficiency and scalability really look like? Like, what does that mean to you?
If I have to bring it down, it probably comes down to 3 specific metrics, right? And number one is how many, and that's within my role, how many institutions are we able to be able to embark our programming into, number one. Number two, how many people within those institutions are able to be a part of the well-being journey, right? That is essentially the impact that we're creating at the end of the day. That's how we measure our impact. And we have different metrics, sub-metrics within that. Yeah. And I think the third part is, in order to do this, how much time am I spending in actually human conversations while AI is taking care of all the other aspects of assisting me in doing the rest of the follow-ups, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the metric that will actually trigger the other 2 metrics. However, though, in order to get to that point, we do have to spend time in configuring the systems to create the automations, workflows, and the follow-ups. And Kyle, the rate at which, rather the rapidity at which the systems are evolving and tools are getting created, actually, I think it's a large experimentation field that we're living in, right? right?
Oh yeah.
So tools that I use about a year or 1.5 years ago sometimes seem to be outdated, or there's a net new one. So our approach is largely being very open-minded and experimental in how we can improve efficiency. We don't really believe it's one standing point that we can get to. It's always a moving point, and we're always constant trying to get there. I think in my role, if I hit probably about 30% of time that I actually do in follow-ups, because all of my workflows are super neatly laid out, and all of the follow-ups are being done, while I'm spending 70% of my time in actual human conversations. I think that's really, really great if I get to that point. Ideally speaking,
that's a good place to aspire to be. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's all measurable based on the meetings on the calendar, right?
There you go. Absolutely. So I'm curious. So you said that you're at, I think you said 15,000 healthcare professionals, and was it over 50 organizations currently, right?
Yes, it is 50 institutions where we have taken a program institutionally. These 15,000 are beyond the 50 institutions as well.
Got it. So
50,
I mean, that's from an outsider's perspective, those are big numbers. There's a lot of penetration there. So I'm curious if there was a scalability project or effort that really led to that success for you early on, and if there was a specific breaking point that made you realize, okay, now I need to start like a new tool or a new process or something like that.
Actually, the answer to this question is very non-AI, interestingly, in the AI world. And the reason I say that is the mission that we are on. And maybe this is true to a lot of the work out there that we do as humans. I think what we really care for and what really matters to us is really what other humans are feeling and how other humans are solving the problems that we are going through. I think the greatest scaling actually happened when healthcare professionals out there, physicians, nurses, therapists, MAs, people in the insurance world, you name it, administrators, leaders, when they actually heard stories of other providers going through these, all right, and that they were able, and then they got really inspired saying, well, here's a problem. Living my life this way for 20 years or 30 years or even more. This seems to be a story in there. And I guess if I have to try breathing by healing breaths, why not? I'll give this a shot. Now, how we arrive at the level of scaling the reach for those conversations is really a whole bunch of toolkits that we actually use, right? I'm talking about using Apollos and HubSpots and open phones and chat GPTs and you name it. My marketing probably uses 5 to 10 other tools, and we probably retired another 50 tools already in the process of our experimentation. but I think what fire catches fire, and I think conversation catches inspiration. So that's really where we are.
It's funny in this super digital world in which we're talking about robots and driverless cars and things like that. It's still that human to human interaction that really leads to, a revelation, a new feeling, an excitement, whatever it is. So I think it comes back to that human empowerment of, having that eye to eye moment. And it's even more true today. So the word of mouth, the referrals, that's always going to be the greatest way to get a great client in the door.
More than ever, even more now.
Yeah, it's so funny to think about that. Okay, great. This has been awesome. So
I do want to make a point in there. I think what that also means is, how do we cut through the noise?
Yes.
For our own self and for people whom we want to serve, right? And I think using the tools to actually not create noise, but to be able to help cut through the noise is something people actually really care for.
Authenticity will always win out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
Right.
awesome. Cool. So I wanted to pivot to kind of one other like high level topic. When you and I originally connected, this is something that was on my mind, and I think that you brought up a couple cool stories. One was about Penn, and one was about Harvard. But I wanted to jump into to wearables. And so if you can kind of discuss how you approach or think about wearables, anything that Healing Breaths might be sharing, and again, one or two of those stories would be great. I thought you had some pretty unique examples that were interesting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's a really great story of a very well respected cardiologist out there at Penn Med. And she told me the story about how she tried our program, right? And she was mentioning how she used to wearing an Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch, I believe it actually measures signals. I think HRV, if I'm not quite wrong. And she used to, at the times when this is days of the pandemic era, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and she used to get a signal that said breathe.
Mm.
And as things got a little tighter at the hospital, she noticed that she was getting that signal 5 times a day.
Mm.
And she talked about how it was very evident about the the amount of work on the hospital, the challenges that the teams were facing. They're a phenomenal set of people, extraordinary culture. I've actually seen them, visited them, really extraordinary human beings. But the amount of workload that they had to deal with obviously got much tougher during the pandemic.
Mm.
It was affecting uh, her health, obviously, and we all are humans. Is the same human that goes back home as well, right?
Mhm.
Interestingly, her mother sent her a little information about the art living programs and said, maybe this is something you should give it a genuine shot. And so she did do the program, the Healing Breaths program. And within very few days, her notification, or almost immediately, her notification started coming down back from 5 to 1 and then even disappearing.
Mm.
And that I thought is a phenomenal story. And she is an extraordinary leader. She was so inspired that within a year, she went on to become a facilitator, instructor slash teacher herself, right?
Oh
She went
wow.
on to do all the entire path of the well-being journey to become a facilitator herself. And within a few months, she brought the programs to Penn Med and to probably hundreds of folks within her hospital that she actually works at. And beyond that, she went and she was so inspired about the whole well being. She went and did the country's foremost chief wellness officer training by Stanford University,
Mm.
run by the Well MD Institute, Dr. Tain Schadenfeld, Stanford CWO chief wellness officer. And then now, as we speak, she's doing a research collaboration with Harvard and Penn Med, doing the study of impact of Healing Breaths programs, Sky and Sahaj, on physicians. And this is a large randomized controlled trial study that she's doing. So I think we're very primed for a landmark study. We're very excited about what is going to come out of this program. It's really beautiful. The team that we're working with at Penn Med is phenomenal. The researchers out of Harvard have been extraordinary. And a big part of what they're using in the study are wearables that they will use to measure HRV, and actually a bunch of other significant metrics that they can measure on a 24/7 basis, from where they can draw data
Mhm.
and understand the impact of the techniques that we were able to bring to them.
That's great stuff. Isn't it funny? It doesn't matter how old we are or what our job is. Mom still knows best, right? Got this doctor, very well
To be a
trained, knows a
top
lot.
doc.
Mom still needed to come in and help out.
Yeah.
But no, that is such a cool story, and I mean, to get that alert to go from 1 to 5, I feel like that has to be so alarming, and just jarring to just see that coming up, and then conversely, just like almost reassuring to see it go back down because of the work that you're doing. So much so that she then, like you said, became an ambassador, if you will, for the program. That's a very, very cool story. I love to hear that stuff. Awesome. So I have two just kind of quick snap questions here for you, Naveen.
Sure.
We'll kind of wrap things up. So just really high level, super broad, vague question. What is your prediction for AI in healthcare? This could be in a year. This could be in 5, 10 years. Whatever, is the right answer for you here.
If we play it right, there's a lot of caveats in there.
Yes.
I think if we do this well and right, we could potentially create a very, very healthy world in healthcare, um, where we can truly get down to creating a healthcare system that values and enables our own well-being. I think that's a huge opportunity that we have in healthcare, and providers not just treating disease, but providers, physicians, nurses are shining examples of their own well-being, and that is really what they're bringing into community and societies, right? That imagine if you're seeing a doctor not because you're sick, but how can you actually thrive in your well-being? I think that's something that AI can assist us in getting.
That's interesting. So that almost feels more of like the next level of preventative kind of care,
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. I think we should prevent ourselves from not being anything less than thriving.
Yes. I love that. All right. That's a great answer. Awesome. So, the last question that I wanted to ask, and I think you might have potentially answered this question already, and that's okay. So feel free to use one of the examples that you've already said.
No
But
problem.
I'm curious if you could just snap your fingers right now, and you had an AI solution or an automated workflow, just boom, be in place and it's working for you. What would that be?
um, I use ChatGPT a lot, but I maybe it could be at a point where it could self-integrate with all the other AI solutions that I actually use,
There you go.
and probably A/B test a few different combinations that I wanted to do, and then come back and report me multiple times during the day about how all these different configurations are working, and probably
Awesome.
find out the most self-optimal integration by itself.
Ideation, reporting, optimization, all in one flow. That would be great.
Yeah, there exactly. Yeah, snap of a finger,
Yeah.
potentially.
Amazing. Well, Naveen, so that was everything. I think this was a great conversation. I love all of your insights. I'm curious, just open forum, if there's any kind of passions or anything that you wanted to share that maybe we didn't touch on yet.
No, I think a big part of the other passion that I also feel for, and now that I've delved into it, is also integration of AI into robotics. Right? I keep wondering where all of this will actually go. I mean, just a very simple example. I think this was a mic drop, network breaking post. Um, Someone who wrote that I want AI to actually do my laundry and dishwashing so that I can actually do the writing and the painting.
Mm.
Right.
I would love
I'm
that
actually
so much. I was thinking about that this weekend mowing my lawn. I was like, where's my robot at right now?
exactly. And I also want to be careful in saying that, because I think some of the greatest epiphanies actually happen as they say, cleaning is actually very therapeutic, and it's while doing dishes or mowing the lawn, and we zone out. and we come across these incredible moments. Einstein, in his early days, apparently was in a very boring job where he was doing things that actually, and I could probably be misstating this and forgive me for that, but he just had so much time that he was able to ruminate and had really great realizations. So I wonder if we actually have robots doing all of that stuff for us, is that going to take away our moments of epiphany? On the other hand, maybe it will actually be really cool instead of spending, a couple of hours in a day trying to create a nice environment for ourselves. If there's a robot that actually does it in an amicable human way. And maybe I could say, you know what, I'll take care of the dishes today. It would be nice to do that.
Yeah.
But I think we're not very far from that. And I think it's important. Obviously, it's going to create a lot of shift in the society. What does that mean to our fellow humans who are assisting us in those roles? How do we empower them to do, I guess, the next level of work that is actually needed? But I think this is not something, again, new in terms of the cycles of innovation in humanity.
Yeah.
The same thing happened during machination in agriculture, industrialization, when computers came in, and the internet, and so on and so forth. So I think this is just another step in there to look at it in terms of human evolution, but with the same questions obviously bear, and probably the same answers will, that the loads will shift. There'll be new avenues and new value that we'll be able to provide.
Exactly. You make a great point. I regularly, on one hand, look forward to the days of a driverless car. That should help eliminate traffic and all that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, I truly enjoy a good long drive because you're not doing anything else. Like the only thing you're doing is sitting there driving, maybe listening to music. So there is like a little moment of peace there. So I guess there is a little bit of a conflict. But to your point, you solve one issue, another issue pops up, and then you solve that again, so you kind of just, continue that never ending cycle, if you will.
Yeah, I think this is the nature of the human mind,
Exactly.
Which is why it's probably very important to meditate every day.
100%, 100%. I'm a big advocate of transcendental meditation. I've been doing
that's fantastic.
It's great. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
That's a lot of that work that we do in healing breaths as well. So
awesome.
it's really really great to know that, Kyle.
Cool. Well, Naveen, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining. Again, you guys can check out Healing Breaths at healingbreaths.org, or at The Art of Living Healing Breaths on Facebook or Instagram. You can find Naveen on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you're involved in the socials or the website or anything like that as well. But thank you. This has been great. I've really enjoyed our conversation, Naveen. Thank you for joining the Brainiac Blueprint. And to all you Brainiacs out there, stay brilliant.
Thank you, Kyle. It's a pleasure.